Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder as I head out for a walk and deliver an episode to you while I stroll home. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good morning, listeners. It is a lovely day here in suburban Chicago. It's partly cloudy with a hint of heat, but nothing too outrageous. Certainly pleasant for a walk outside. Well, as we roll into July and I continue to tell you about games I played in June, the best way to do that is to give you my first impressions. That's right. It's time for another Shooting from the Hip triple shot. Shooting from the Hip triple shot is a mini review segment in which I talk about first impressions of games that I've played for the first or maybe second time recently. And I tell you what I thought of them, what I expect to get from playing them more, or maybe I'm not going to play them again. We'll see. Let's jump right in, shall we? Today we're going to start with another game that I purchased and played at Origins. This is a game I heard about a few times on the So Very Wrong About Games podcast, and I think it's an interesting experiment in social deduction. This is Scape Goat. Scape Goat is a social deduction game in which you play a group of people, goats actually, in the narrative of the art, who have pulled off some sort of heist, and now the cops are on your trail, and you're conspiring to frame one of the group as the conspirator. So the way the game works, you each get a card, and on the back of the card is a grid, a huge grid of icons, of numbers and letters with icons depicting the other players. You roll, at the beginning of the round, you roll dice, and it gives you a row and a column, and then each player examines the grid on their card to see whether or not which player is the target. So, for instance, if there are 5 people playing, we might roll the dice, and on 4 of the cards, it will tell us that the green player is the target, but on the green player's card, it's going to tell them that the yellow player is the target, for example. And then what your goal is to rearrange the cards that people have in their hands. So you have your player card that tells you who's the target, and then you have these other cards that allow you that are sort of represent evidence. And if everyone has evidence that points toward the person being framed, then you can do a frame attempt. The way the frame attempt works is everybody plays a card, and if the person who's the target is represented on every single card except for their own, then the group wins. So the idea is one person doesn't know they're the target, everyone else does. Everyone's working to frame the person who's the target. So the twist of the game, or the sort of essential nub, is that since the cops are looking for you, anybody who wants to can go to the cops. And the thing is, if you go to the cops and you're not the target, you lose, as does everyone else who's not the target. So it's really interesting. If anyone goes to the cops, the target wins. The scapegoat wins. But the only person who should want to go to the cops is the scapegoat, but they don't know they're the scapegoat. So the cleverness of this is that nobody knows who is the target, and you all think you might be the target, but you're not. It's a fun little social deduction game. It's not going to have the legs to bear significant replaying the way that the Resistance does or Secret Hitler does. It's pretty light that way, but it makes for a nice intro to the evening. A handful of plays, a little bit of suspicion, a little bit of paranoia, and it was on sale for $15 at the Indie Boards and Cards booth at Origins. So I was happy to pick it up. That's Scape Goat. Next up, a slightly older game that a friend brought to Toggle Gaming. This is Clacks, a Discworld game. So Clacks was inspired by or draws on the story that's told in one of the Discworld books. They're the books that involve Commander Vimes and the city of Ankh-Morpork. And in particular, they focus on this one character in that world who is always trying to scheme and get his way with things. In particular, the book that the Clacks system refers to is from the novel Going Postal. I think that's what it's called. In this novel, the main character has been tasked with getting the post office up and running again. And part of the reason it's not running is that it was bloated and poorly run, so no one wants to use the post office. But it's also competing with this new system that's essentially Morse code telegraphy, and they're called Clacks. So there's these huge beacons that are up on these long poles, and they're used to transmit messages from one part of the city to another, or from one city to another, using these sort of relays. And of course, the person who runs the Clacks system is corrupt and whatever. But in this game, you are trying to convey your message through the Clacks more quickly than anyone else does. And you do that by taking this 4x4 grid and trying to arrange a 2x3 area in the 4x4 grid to match the pattern that you need to send the letter that you need to mate your word. So it's an abstract pattern matching game with the thinnest veneer of plot on it. The veneer of plot is so thin that it doesn't really need to be there at all. If you hadn't read the novels, the game doesn't tell you enough about the novels to have it matter. But more importantly, you don't need to understand any of it to do well at the game. So in that regard, the theme really doesn't hold up, and it's not nearly as interesting as, say, the Ankh-Morpork game, which of course I've only played in the Nanti-Narking form, but still has the thematic pleasure of the theme actually making difference in the game. Whereas in Clacks, the theme makes no difference at all. It basically might as well not be there. That said, it was an interesting little puzzle game. I enjoyed my plays of it. We actually played 2 plays back to back, so that we played one round where we learned to play the game, and then played another round where we got better at it. All in all, it was pretty fun, an amusing game if you don't mind it being an abstract puzzle game. I certainly wouldn't go out of my way to buy it. I don't even know. I'm trying to think, how cheap would it have to be for me to buy it? I don't know that I would buy it at any price. I mean, I enjoyed it. I'd happily play it with other people, but I think if I bought it, it would make its way into my collection and then make its way out again sometime soon. So I might pick it up at a Goodwill for $1 or $2, just because it's good enough for that. But even then, if I'm trying to make my collection smaller, this might not make that cut. So it was a pleasurable game. I'm happy to have played it. I'd play it again if someone got it out, but I don't know that I would buy it myself. That's Clacks, a Discworld game. And then finally, toward the end of the night, I got the chance to try Bomb Squad. Bomb Squad is a real-time game from Tasty Minstrel Games, I believe. And the premise is that you are, as the title would suggest, a bomb squad. And what you're trying to do is navigate your bomb disarming robot into the building to accomplish certain objectives before the bomb goes off and kills everybody. The challenge of the game is that it's a real-time game, so you have to it's a real-time planned movement game. So you have to do your movement of the robot under time pressure, with the idea of having it move a certain amount and resolve a certain number of conflicts or problems before the bombs blow up in the building. The way it's played is you get a bunch of different cards that allow the robot to do different things: move forward, turn. You can use it to untie a person. You can use it to disarm a bomb. You can use it to open a door. This is complicated by the fact that the people, bombs, and doors all have colors assigned. And so you can't use the yellow untie a person card. You need the red untie a person card if you have the red hostage. That's kind of it. Like I said, it's a programming game, so during the time you play cards to program the movement of the robot, and then once you've played your cards, then kind of pause time and then run the robot to see what happens, see if it manages to help people out before the bombs explode. All in all, it was an enjoyable game. I always like a good co-op. It's fun to work with other people to try to solve problems, and I thought this game did that pretty well. At the same time, very fiddly. So if you don't thoroughly understand what's going on in the game, it's kind of confusing at parts. And the way that the game resolves, like I said, ends up being you have to kind of fiddle with a bunch of different stuff to get it to go properly. The design in the game, it's got to be a couple years old. and it looks like a game from the mid 2000s, which is probably when it was published, but the graphic design is a little less polished than you would expect from a game today, and that doesn't really affect the gameplay so much as the look and feel of the game, which is just a little bit antiquated. So that's Bomb Squad, a game that I played, I think from Tasty Minstrel Games, although. So that's 3 more games explained, 3 more games under the belt, which just leaves 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games from June that I haven't talked about yet. So we're going to see another couple shooting from the hip episodes emerging relatively quickly here on the podcast, although I try to do one other thing in between each one. We'll see. So my friends, head over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269 and share your thoughts about your experience playing games in June. How did you do? Did you enjoy yourself? What games did you like the most? What new games did you try? Have you played any of the new games that I tried? Particularly the 3 games that I talked about in this episode. What did you think of those? Have you tried them? Do you like them or not, and why? You can participate in that conversation over on Board Game Geek in Guild 3269. There's a link in the show notes if you aren't sure how to find that. You could also email me directly, brendan@rattleboxgames.com, or you could send a message to me on Board Game Geek. Wombat929 is my username there. I'd also be happy to play an online game or 2 with you. You can do that by messaging me on Boitajou, Board Game Arena, or yukata.de. In all 3 places, my username is, you guessed it, Wombat929. Thanks for joining me on my walk today. I hope that your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.